Hello, thank you for joining us. This is Platform. I'm Ruth Aguele. Life, they say, is transient. Understanding that everything is temporary and will eventually change or cease to exist. Like they say, there is a time to be born and a time to die. But one thing that has remained sacrosanct even after death are people's legacies. The late former president, Muhammad Buhari, during his administration, contributed his quota in driving institutional reforms. And one key aspect where policies were effectively implemented is the agricultural sector. During the late leader's administration, key agricultural policies and initiatives aimed to boost agricultural production, to enhance food security, create jobs, diversify the economy, and increase exchange earnings. Now, the policies, the Agricultural Promotion Policy Framework, launched in 2016, aimed to revitalize the agricultural sector by addressing issues like inadequate infrastructure, limited access to finance and inputs, and low productivity. It focused on increasing production, improving value chains and promoting exports. Then we have the Anchors Borrowers Program, launched in 2015 by the Central Bank of Nigeria. The program provided loans and agri-inputs to smallholder farmers to boost production of specific commodities and reduce reliance on imports. In the same vein, the Presidential Fertilizer Initiative was to ensure availability of quality fertilizers at affordable prices for farmers, contributing to increased productivity and yields. No doubt the Buhari administration made significant efforts to revitalize the agri sector through various policies. Well, on Platform, the spotlight is on a man who played a pivotal role in revamping the agricultural sector during his tenure when he was alive. And the impact recorded, from the rural farmers. We want to explore those legacies he left behind in revitalizing the agri sector for economic prosperity. And our guest is Professor Abba Gambo from the Department of Crop Production, University of Abuja, Maiduguri, I beg your pardon. Thank you very much for joining us, Prof.
Thank you, Ruth.
It's really a sad time for the nation.
Really?
Yeah. Okay, so before we bring in our panelists who will take you through his profile, Professor Gambo holds a doctorate degree on philosophy from crop science, agronomy, Master of Science, agronomy, Bachelor of Science, agriculture. He's a member of Faculty of Agriculture Academic Board, member Department of Crop Production Academic Board, member Horticultural Society of Nigeria. He's also a member Abuja Horticultural Society, member Borno Museum Society, member Wheat Science Society of Nigeria, among other reputable bodies. He's a member of Ministerial Committee for the rebranding of the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Water Resources, National Consultant Horticulture National Program for Food Security. These were some of the community service he did back then. Policy Advisor Consultant of Agriculture, Nigeria Governors Forum Secretariat. And he's also a member of Borno State Agricultural Transformation Team, member National Committee on 4-year Plan of Rebranding of Education in Nigeria. All this he contributed and still contributing. Well done, Prof.
Thank you very much, Ruth. Thank you.
Our panelist is one of our correspondents here in the NTA, Ayo Deji Makinde. Ayo, thank you for joining us.
Well, it's always a privilege, Ruth. Yeah.
All right, Prof. It came like a shock to the nation, and this is a man that was well celebrated during his time, and we're seeing even after in death, he's still being celebrated, and the nation is mourning, obviously. So when we look at some of the policies, he left behind and the aspect of his legacy, especially the agricultural sector, which is the spotlight for this conversation. If you want to look at his commitment, the way he demonstrated that commitment to revamp the sector, what are your opening remarks?
Thank you very much. First and foremost, I want to extend my heartfelt condolences to the Buhari family, Katsina State, the whole country. May the soul of Baba Buhari rest in perfect peace. And I want to commend the management of NTA. Through them, the whole of Nigeria was able to see everything vividly. And it was through NTA that we saw virtually everything. So I think it's highly commendable. Now, first and foremost, when he assumed office, the first thing he started was diplomatic shuttles. And he used that diplomacy to make sure that it impacted on agriculture. The moving from one country to another, attending various meetings, meeting with international figures, donor organizations, etc. All these diplomatic shuttles paid off when our former Minister of Agriculture, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, was appointed the head of the African Development Bank. And the African Development Bank today is doing a multi-billion-dollar activity in agriculture in Nigeria, one. Then secondly, he was there when our own Dr. Okonjo-Iweala was appointed as the head of the World Trade Organization, which is a very formidable organization. And the impact that woman has brought into Nigeria through that organization agriculturally is also something of note. Then finally, he saw to the emergence of Hajia Amina Muhammad as the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations. And that position actually exposed Nigeria to the extent that certain things that cannot be gotten quickly were actually actualized. The President Buhari regime started with a 5 cardinal agricultural program. First, he said we are going to boost local production and achieve food security. Achieving food security means boosting the local production. Thirdly, he said we are going to create more jobs for our youths and women doing that. And thirdly, he said we are going to make sure that our dependence on foreign goods is stopped while we also increase our export base. And finally, he said there has to be a kind of financial grant to farmers through various activities that we'll be talking later. These were the first 5 cardinal principles on agriculture that he touched. And to be truthful, I've been in the agricultural subsector for 34 years. I think all the 5 principles has been achieved to a certain level.
Okay. Ayo, I'm sure you have
yes,
a question.
surely. At the time the president emerged in 2015, there was this clarion call that Nigeria needed to diversify its economy. And one thing the president consistently said, to the point he even said, if the youth say they're looking for the white-collar job, agriculture is surely a way.
Yeah.
In his 8-year reign, how much of attraction did agriculture give to the youth? Prof?
Okay, thank you very much. Now, there was a particular program that was called Appeals, and it was also launched by President Muhammadu Buhari. And the Appeals was a kind of specially designed scheme to motivate youths and women into the agricultural sector. Thousands of youths and women were trained on various facets of agriculture across the whole value chain: seed production, planting, weeding, fertilizers, etc., up to processing, micro-processing, etc. So many people got jobs through that. And remember, it was during that time when we started seeing the canning, local canning of fruit juices on the streets of Abuja.
Yeah.
You see a mixture of pineapple and citrus, a mixture of clover. People are stopping by to buy. Previously, before Buhari, such things were not there. So he noted that there is a huge gap in agro-processing, and the post-harvest loss in agricultural subsector is so high. We posit a kind of about 59% loss. So under that scheme, he was able to train them. You can do a kind of micro scheme, and women took over quickly the market. And you see them canning pineapple with watermelon, watermelon with citrus, and then all these things on the road. People consume them on a daily basis. Highly nutritious, very valuable. Then another thing that he was able to do was the creation of more universities, federal colleges of education, federal colleges of agriculture, and then federal polytechnics. All those was a kind of opening. Lecturers were able to get jobs. Most of the lecturers perhaps are youths. They were able to get jobs. And then our people that are always fighting for admission in other universities are all there. A very good example is the Federal University of Agriculture, Zuru, in Kebbi State. Zuru is a local community, but by the establishment of that university in Zuru, the whole Zuru scenario was opened up. And I remember it was my colleague from University of Maiduguri that was appointed the first vice chancellor. So you can see opening up, Zuru is also a very good agrarian area. The people are good farmers. But then lack of facilities like that would not allow them to take their crops out. So now you find people, professors, other academicians going on visiting to Zuru. As they are coming back, they fill up their cars with the agricultural produce, thereby reducing the post-harvest loss, increasing food security, and at the same time boosting local production. If a farmer can produce and all his products will be mopped up, definitely he will be encouraged to produce more. But when you produce and then you cannot even have access to the market, etc., I think that's the major gap in the agricultural subsector.
Well, Prof, it's so interesting that you mentioned the issue of the University of Agriculture in Zuru, because one of the very key names that came out in the first 2 years of the president's administration was the lake rice. Most people really keyed into it, and it really changed the narrative that things could be done. Within that period, we also had the proliferation of different local rice mills, and they had the stoners and everything.
And that was when we saw the rice pyramids.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, with this initiative, people would say the president was more of someone who dedicated much time to agriculture because he believed in it. But beyond that, how much of contribution did this have, or impact did he have on national development?
Okay, thank you very much. I hope I will not get emotional if I'm talking about the rice revolution, because as a consultant to the Nigerian Governors Forum, under the chairmanship of Governor Abdulaziz Yari, I was the very first person that wrote the concept note for the rice revolution. When I briefed the chairman, he now said, let's get a committee of rice-producing state governors, and I think there were 12 then. And then I was called to brief them. When I finally briefed them, they now said they are going to meet the vice president. The questions that were asked by the governors then was, what was the total consumption of rice in the country? Then what is the total import? And then what is the gap? Then the second question was, how can we be able to match the gap? The figures are changing, but then I told them plainly then that this was what we consume and this is the amount of import. But then bridging the gap is a very simple thing. I said, first, quality seeds. The kind of rice seeds we're using are not international standard. They are not hybrid. They are not good varieties. Farmers depend on their own rice harvest, which is not the scenario in other countries. So I said that is one. Then secondly, I said the planting of rice only during the rainy season cannot meet up the gap quickly. And then there has to be dry season intensive irrigated rice production schemes. And to his memory, I remember President Babangida, President Buhari, went to Birnin Kebbi to launch the dry season scheme in accordance to my concept note. And then thirdly, and most importantly, we said we should motivate the youths and the women into the rice sector. When we started the program, I think we had about 4.8 million hectares of rice in the whole country. 3 or 4 years after, it doubled to 8.4 million hectares under rice. And that was when the rice millers and everything came in. And there was a kind of declaration, total ban on importation of rice into the country. That was what ignited to boost the local production. Modern seeds were brought from other countries. Modern machinery, mechanization was introduced into the rice scheme. People started farming rice twice in a year. In a particular location in Kebbi State, Yawuri, they actually plant rice 3 times in a year. 3 times. They do rice season of 3 times in a year. So, and then whatever they were doing, the millers were there to mop up. So it also boosted them. The youths that were moving up and down, they saw the opportunity and then they came in. And the women, in most times, the planting and the harvesting are done by women. So that also boosted thousands of jobs. It created wealth. And at the same time, the milling. I think at the beginning we had about 10 prominent millers. But after the launching of that program, the number of standard internationally gauged mills, rice mills in Nigeria, increased to about 67.
You know, Prof, and when I was going through the report, an international report, we saw the metric tons increase to 5.3. That was from 2021 to 2022,
Exactly.
Which is quite commendable. But you can't talk about this revolution without some of those initiatives that were used to push, like the Anchor's Borrower scheme. You know, it really helped smallholder farmers to achieve this feat you were talking about. Let's dissect that policy, because you can't mention the PMB administration without the mention of that initiative.
Definitely. 2 projects were brought in to assist the rice revolution. A committee was inaugurated with the former Vice President, Professor Yemi Osibanjo, Presidential Committee on Food Security, and I was happy to be a member of that committee. The deputy chairman was the former governor of Kebbi State, present Minister Atiku Bagudu. And what we sat down and decided was, without finance, there is nothing anybody can do. Most of the rural farmers do not have the wherewithals to buy the kind of seeds that we're talking about. We brought new varieties, Faro 43, Faro 44, and you know, hybrid seeds are very expensive. So you have to now get a means of giving them something. That was how the Anchor Borrowers program started. And it was handled by the Deputy Chairman, Atiku Bagudu. And through the Anchor Borrowers program, a total of, I don't know the figure, but the millions smallholder farmers, millions of smallholder farmers were able to get some cash in their hands, and then they were able to get the quality seeds, get the necessary machineries and the fertilizers, etc., and then they put it back into the Rice Revolution program. Secondly, and most important, was the fertilizer, presidential initiative on fertilizer, the PFI. What the committee did actually under the leadership of Professor Yemi Osibanjo was that to make fertilizer available to virtually every corner of this country, most especially in the rice-producing states. I told you we listed about 12 of them. We identified good rice-producing states, and the emphasis was there actually. The bag of MPK, 15 then, was 11,000 naira in the market. But with the launch of the presidential initiative, fertilizer initiative, the price dropped to 5,500. The records are there. From 11,000, with the launch of the program, it dropped to 5,500, and it was relatively available everywhere. Farmers were getting it. The rice was growing very well. Then the issue of pests came in. Quail bats here eating the rice, and grasshoppers, etc. And another thing with most of these pests is that they come when it is time for harvest. So we had problem of quail bats, especially in the northwestern part of the country, and at times in Jigawa, etc. What the president did, to his eternal glory, was that how do you tackle this? And you know, they move in millions. That was when we saw aircrafts carrying pest chemicals, and then pesticides, insecticides, and all other kind of chemicals that were being blown from the air. And then you see plenty of birds dying in millions, etc. It was a good thing. Through that, the farmers were saved, their crops were saved, food security was increased, post-harvest losses were reduced, and wealth was created.
But, you know, Prof, it's good, you know, we should commend some of the laudable efforts and the impact towards implementation of the initiatives. But again, it's also good to draw lessons from how challenges were being surmounted. You just mentioned how pests, you know, the pest control aspect and all that aspect. You were really directly involved in the Anchor's Borrower scheme. What were some of the challenges, you know, the farmers said they experienced, and how was it able to, you know, to be addressed?
The first challenge, Ruth, was who was truly a farmer. That was the first challenge. We see kind of, people coming, we are farmers, we need the loan, we are farmers, we need the loan. Where is your farm? he's Abuja based. So we now said, okay, tell us where your farm is. And then at the time we said, can we start using geocoordinates, GPS, to know your farm? And then we said, we need your national ID number to link into your telephone, and then to move to make sure that, so many youths were taken into consideration, and you are moving all over the country to verify what the farmers are saying. One, to ascertain who is actually a true farmer. 2, where is his farm? 3, what's the hectareage of his farm? And 4, what are the types of crops the farmer is growing? So these were the 4 questions that we asked them to go out, and the youths were all over the country getting this data back.
I was going to ask about data. Was the work not done with accurate data?
Yeah, data is actually a national problem. In every sector, you find that without data is not so good. And even now, as I'm talking to you, if you ask me as a professor of agriculture, what is the total number of farmers in Nigeria, I cannot be able to give you the exact figure. When you go to the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, the figure might differ. When you go to the state, when you go to the All Farmers Association of Nigeria, the figure will also differ. So there is still this data deficit in Nigeria, not just in the agricultural subsector, but in all the other sectors. Now, what we did after that was that after identifying the farmers, knowing their farms, and then knowing the kind of crops they are growing, money was being dispensed to them. But, in the typical Nigerian factor, your in-law will come at a time. I need some of the money. He doesn't have a farm. And your wife is nagging you in the night. So you have no alternative, You have to bend the rules at times. Definitely rules were bent under that condition, definitely. But then the overall view, when you look at it, it has actually made rice particularly a stable crop in Nigeria. And for the first time in the history of Nigeria, Nigerians were able to produce the rice to feed themselves. The imports were stopped from India, from other countries. All the rice that were flooding the market, they were stopped. And don't forget, the borders were also closed.
I was going to say that. That also
had that also
impact.
has a big impact.
Yeah.
If the borders were closed, that means domestic production must rise, because we must feed ourselves. So all this directly and indirectly affected agricultural productivity through the 8-year reign of late President Muhammadu Buhari. And I'm happy to say that I was actually part of the presidential. Professor Yemi Osibanjo, all the glory to him. He did an excellent job in that regard. Then it was from there we started saying, let's feed the school children. We noticed the nutritional gap in the country. Children were going to school without food, without the necessary nutrients, etc. And the school feeding program was initiated. And one of the major highlights of the school feeding program, they said all the people that are consulted to provide food to the peoples in the primary must be from that particular locality.
Yeah.
And secondly, whatever you're going to use in feeding the peoples must be sourced from that immediate locality, no external things. So that also gives a big boost to the farmers. Whatever they were producing, the caterers were coming to mop up, and then it made them to go into massive production because it was needed. So it was a kind of chain, like a chemical reaction. Once you ignite, you keep on seeing so many changes going around, and then we got youths that were able to have good IQ, well-fed in the school, and then the number of children that were not coming to school increased because of the food that was not being given to them. I remember in a particular case where we saw some guys of about 17, 18 years coming to a primary school that they are pupils.
Okay. Yeah, indeed. Ayo.
Well, Prof, I've listened to 1 or 2 of your lectures at different platforms, and one thing you've consistently advocated is the nutritional gap that we have in the upbringing of children. Under President Muhammadu Buhari, we had a national livestock program. Some would say that was a foundation to what we now have as the Ministry of Livestock Development. From the time the president took charge in 2015 till he left in 2023, how much of development were we able to make in terms of livestock? And how did we address the nutritional gap amongst children at an early age?
Late President Buhari was a farmer and a herdsman because he has plenty of cattle himself.
Yes.
You understand? You always see the farm. I think when he was filling the code of conduct forms in 2015, when he came in as president, he mentioned he has 298 animals on his farm, cows, sheep, goats, etc. So being a farmer himself, he knows. Now the major problem with the livestock sector is this constant movement. A typical Fulani cow in Nigeria gives a yield of about 1 liter of milk per day. By the time you go to other African countries, Namibia, etc., you find out that the same cow they have gives about 30 liters per day. But then the management system are different. Here, you find them in Maiduguri today, next tomorrow you find them in Lokoja, next tomorrow you find them near Port Harcourt, etc. So as they are moving, the cattle are also exercising and losing most of the nutrients. Exactly, depreciating. You see them, most of them skinny. We do apologize to the Fulanis. As skinny as the Fulanis. The cows are skinny and the Fulanis are skinny. Don't mind me, I'm a Kanuri man. Dembos will query me and then I will tell him the plain truth. The Fulanis were skinny and the cows were also skinny. So President Buhari came, can we do a kind of ranching exactly like he's on his farm? Ranching. Keep the animals in one place, bring the food to them, bring the water to them. When they are sick, call the vet doctor to come and see them. Get some facilities for them to milk and sell the milk. Find a marketing channel for them to sell the milk. That was when the ranching program started. We called it zero ranching. Zero grazing means no you don't allow the cows to go out and look for food, but you bring the food to them. When I was discussing with Admiral Murtala Nyako, one of the foremost farmers, he told me, how do you keep your horses in the palaces? Do your horses go to forage for food? I said, no. The horses are well revered in the palaces because they are symbols of dignity. And he said, that is how everybody is supposed to keep his cow. Keep them in one place. The way you are taking care of your horses, bringing the food, bringing the fresh water, etc., it should be done. But then when the ranching started, at the initial stage, they said every state should give 10,000 hectares of land. And there was a kind of huge uproar in the whole country, you know, Nigeria. They said, no, we will not allow Fulani people to come and settle in our state, etc. All these things came and passed. And now we are happy. We must commend the president for establishing a special Ministry of Livestock Development.
Yes, and
it's a Fulani man that is leading that. He's also a herdsman.
He is, because we could see the efforts, you know, going around the country to revamp that livestock sector and, you know, harness the potential.
Excellent Fulani man, and he has actually started working. Then within the same period, there was the launching of the LPRES, Livestock Productivity Program. Now about 20 states are into that. What they do is to emphasize the ranching thing. They went a little bit further. They said, we are going to find a big piece of land, we'll fence it, and then we'll put the livestock. When we put the livestock, we have to improve the breeds of the present livestock through artificial insemination so that we increase their quality as for milk production and as for beef production. Then they said there has to be a kind of vet clinic within that same ranch. And they said there has to be a small human hospital within the same ranch, with a market within the ranch so that people can come in, buy what the byproducts, and then the people in there can also buy. And they said there has to be schools for the children of the farmers. And then at the end of the day, the question we always ask, why do they move about? It's because of two reasons, Ruth: water and grass.
You know, Prof, there's a lot to look into in that aspect. But like you said, the present administration is tilting in the right direction with the establishment of a ministry to look at all those areas.
For the very first time in the history of the country.
So let's take a break, Prof. We'll continue with the conversation. We'll be back. Please stay tuned. All right, thank you for staying tuned. The conversation is on legacy of late President, former President Muhammadu Buhari in the agricultural sector. Professor Gambo, you were just telling us some of the feats recorded in the livestock and what we're seeing play out presently, going by the initiative that the present administration has, looked into. But let me take you back to one aspect the late former president believed in. He said, grow what you eat and eat what you grow. What was it like? You worked a lot with the sub-nationals. What was it like? What was the synergy like? Where do people actually believe then that they can eat what they grow and grow what they eat?
Okay, once again, Ruth, with all fairness, his lifestyle, when you look at his lifestyle, the Spartan lifestyle, he doesn't care about all these vanities, even in clothing, etc., you understand? So, and then he was a kind of well-disciplined policy man. He enjoys following the rules. And I remember, he took him some months, about 6 months before he got a cabinet, because he was going through every bit and details. When the cabinet first came, we were happy. The first minister of agriculture under President Muhammadu Buhari was Chief Audu Ogbe. So Chief Audu Ogbe contributed his quota. He launched the Green Alternative Program, which was to practicalize that statement you made. Grow what you eat and eat what you grow. That statement that you made gave the impetus for the launching of the Green Alternative document. One. Then secondly, as we were going, he saw that the policies were not going the way he wanted. And I must confess, at that point, there was a kind of gap between the national and the subnationals. When I came to the Federal Ministry of Agriculture and I was given a copy of the Green Alternative, I went back home and then I showed it to the Commissioner of Agriculture. He said he's not aware of this document. So it means it was crafted, everything in Abuja, and then consequently, another program was introduced, NATIP, the National Agricultural Transformation, Technology and Innovation. They said this program, you must go back to the rural areas, talk to them, know their problems, proffer solutions, and fix it into the program. I remember I was also part of the Northeast hearing of that particular program. It was at Gombe. So all the stakeholders in the agricultural value chain from the northeastern states, we all converge in Gombe, and then we discuss thoroughly. In fact, at times you see the farmers as if they are fighting. And we listen to all of them. And the processors are there, trying to peck on the farmers, produce more so that we can buy more and then get some more money. You understand? So all these things were taken into cognizance. And along the line, he also launched the Green Imperative Program. It was meant solely for mechanization. I told you he did plenty of diplomatic shuttles with the government of Brazil. 10,000 tractors were delivered to Nigeria under the Green Imperative Program. It was mainly on mechanization. We all realized at a very young age that the hoe we are still using is an archaic or a kind of museum thing in other countries. So without the mechanization and without introducing technology into the agricultural subsector, there is no way we can get the much needed food security. And I must also commend the present government for leveraging on that.
Yes.
Just recently, the Minister of Agriculture and Food Security, Senator Abubakar Kyari, there was a launching with the president of about 10,000 tractors in conjunction with another foreign country. So these are the kinds we want to see. And through that, private sector were motivated to come into it. Olam came. And then one of the largest processing plants was found near Kaduna. Dangote came into while he was doing cement, he said, when the fertilizer issue came, he said, he narrowed into fertilizer. You understand? And then WACOT came, so many other private sector organizations came in, and most of them mopped up several youths and women into the system, thereby creating jobs and making the fertilizer more available to people, thereby boosting food security and increasing the needed food sufficiency we're talking about.
Prof, at some point during the tenure of President Muhammadu Buhari, he came up with this innovation, the National Agricultural Land Estate. I think it was part of a deliberate attempt to change the narrative that people can live in comfortable homes and farm and contribute their own quota. What truly was the reaction from Nigerians, and how many people truly embraced it, and how much of impact did it really have as well?
Okay, can we just go back a little bit? When he was military head of state, he launched the Back to Farm program. It was compulsory for every governmental official, every lecturer and every university, everyone that is in the government curfew, to make sure that you have a little farm. So for the first time we saw everybody has actually, you know, by then there was the war against indiscipline, and people, once he utters anything, it becomes law automatically. But under a democratic setting, it's now different. You understand? There is the legislation that he has to make sure that he respects. And you know, the kind of relationship between him and the National Assembly, it was an excellent one. So there were also plenty of bills sponsored by him in accordance to agricultural thing. The land issue was one of the bills that was sponsored by his regime, and it passed through the House of Representatives and the Senate. Land is actually owned by the subnationals. It doesn't belong to the federal government. And President Buhari respected that. It's a constitutional thing. Land belongs to all the subnationals. The federal government does not have a single hectare of land anywhere. Land belongs to the states. So under that purview, he now gave the subnationals the power to make sure that the lands are there. And then there was also a massive program to put more land into agriculture. And then you have to mechanize. While states in the northern part of the country were asking for tractors, states in the southwestern part and the southeast were asking for excavators, big graders, because of the forested areas. So the needs were different, because the agroecological vegetational zone of Nigeria is so huge within the same country. You have somewhere with 3 months of rainfall. You have another area with about 11 months of rainfall within the same country. And you have a place that you don't have a single tree, completely desert, and you go to south or southeast, you enter a forest, and then you'll be going for about several kilometers without seeing the sun, even when it is 12 noon. So the needs were different. And then those needs were being identified, and they were encapsulated into all the agricultural programs he was doing. What Mr. A needs is different from what Mr. B needs.
Yes.
So he was able to make sure that he jingles, to make sure that he satisfies Mr. A and also satisfy Mr. B at the same time, all with the main objective that the agricultural subsector will stand strong on its own.
And you know, for it then standing strong, even now, we saw some of the initiatives he subsequently introduced, like the Zero Reject Initiative, which was designed as of that time that some of our commodities were being rejected. And if you want to, you know, assess that initiative, that it really had that impact it was supposed to have, because rejecting our commodities was a slap for the country then, and this came up.
Yeah. Now, he made some progress, especially in cashew. You understand? Nigeria, for the first time, became one of the highest exporters of cashew during his regime. But then the other problems were, you know, the farmers, the lack of extension delivery system has made the farmers to be on their own. They use virtually everything they can get to make sure that they preserve their crops. The sniper that we use to kill terrible insects and even pests in our houses are sometimes used to preserve their beans. I'm telling you.
Wow.
You understand? And you know this battery that we use for torchlights before?
Yes, yes.
They break the battery.
Big one.
Yeah. Normal battery.
Yeah.
For torchlights in the rural areas, they still use it. So when the battery is, has finished its tenor, they now break the battery. The black powder that comes from the battery are mixed with seeds, so that when they plant, insects that are in the soil, nematodes, cannot affect such seeds. And you know, it's something that it carries on.
So
up
that
to harvest.
affected those communities.
And then the international community has a great rule. Very stringent rules, and most especially the European Union. Whatever that is going to enter their country must be free of so many chemicals. And I think that was when the Standard Organization of Nigeria came, NAFDA came in. We have to tell the farmers, stop using this, instead use that, etc. The exports were actually denied because for the first time when they saw the beans, they noticed the stresses of sniper in the beans. And even in Nigeria, there were cases of some boarding schools when they were fed beans for, I think in Kano, when they were fed beans for dinner. You understand? Before the night finishes, about 100 young ladies in that, it's a girls' secondary school. I remember vividly. They had this running stomach, and then before you know it, the whole place became messy because of just beans. And we have families eating a good dinner together, and all of a sudden in the morning you find that all of them have passed away. All these scenarios we've had in Nigeria is because of these chemicals. And the main factor, Ruth, is if you do not have somebody that will reach out to the farmers to tell him this is when to plant, this is what to plant, this is what to apply, this is what to use. You understand?
Yeah.
So they are left at their own
mercy.
At their own little technology, which is local, and they have no alternative. Somebody will just try whatever. I saw people, some farmers, using diesel. They go to the mechanics when the car diesel, your car, the diesel has expired and you're changing. The moment it changes, they collect it and they are using it on their farms to take pests and things away. And you know, all these chemicals are being absorbed by the plants as they are growing up.
Yes.
So once you are eating, you are also eating the chemicals at the same time. It's a big issue. But now this present government is talking about organic farming, etc. And I think this will go a long way. But then the issue of the extension delivery system, whereby we used to see youths on bikes happily moving from one village to another, going to extend agricultural information and then collecting the problems of the farmers and coming back to research institutes to give to universities to give the problems, and they wait for us to give the solutions. They quickly take the solutions and move back to those rural areas. Those youths were well respected, the extension agents were well respected. And I remember when we were growing, the Malamangona, we call them in the northern part of the country, the farmers, head of the farming, agriculture or whatever, head of agriculture kind of. They were among the most respected people, because their words are always low. They tell you when to plant, they tell you what to plant, they tell you how to plant, and they tell you what to apply. Then everything was moving on smoothly. That was when you had the pyramids of groundnuts everywhere, Maiduguri with the heights and skin and plenty of beans coming up, etc. But along the line, the extension delivery system died, and the farmers were left on their own. If you are left on your own, you do whatever that you can get to make sure that you preserve. And don't forget, these farmers, their only asset is the land. And their only profession is farming. So they do whatever they can to make sure that they protect. If you end up doing the farming and you have no harvest, you'll be a debtor for life.
Indeed.
Definitely.
Okay. Hiya.
Prof, I'm so happy you made mention of efforts being made to really attract people into agriculture. But also, as someone who worked closely with the late President Muhammadu Buhari, how much of sensitization, how much of efforts was really put into sensitization to really attract the younger people? And I'm saying this because when I still lived with my late father then, it was mandatory to go to the farm every weekend. And that was how I learned how to use the go to hell to pluck cocoa, oranges, plant cassava, and the rest. And I was doing that while also, schooling in secondary school then. At some point, the narrative seemed to change. And I'm sure Prof will be familiar with this slang, the cashing out thing. Most people abandon this practical way that was really natural to we Nigerians to chase the white-collar jobs. So in the 8 years of President Muhammadu Buhari, how much of efforts did he really put on ground to really bring back people? I knew a few people who really invested quite a lot of money into agriculture with their degrees, and they made a lot of money. Prof?
Thank you. Now, you know, I told you he was a policyman, and he knows that the national mandate for synthesizing the country dependent on the National Orientation Agency. He got a vibrant lecturer, Dr. Abati, to head that agency, and then they tried their bit. But now, during the break, Ruth, I saw the advertisement that the present man at the National Orientation Agency is doing, and I think that's the kind of job that is supposed to be transmitted. I remember when we were growing in the rural areas, there used to be this mobile car that will come showing films. We call it Majigi. In front of the district head's house, in front of the village head's house, they will announce before then. Women, children, everybody will come out, and then there will be a kind of screen. They will show you. I remember when President Obasanjo was the head of state with late Eradua, you see them carrying the horses, and it interested the farmers in the rural areas. The same hoe we are using is the same hoe that the head of state is using, you understand? That was a kind of big motivation. But now those mobile things are no longer there, and then the extension delivery system is no longer there, but then that is the impetus of the National Orientation Agency and other governmental agencies.
So, Prof, as we round off, very briefly, you know, going forward and looking back at a man who left legacies and footprints on the sands of time, what lessons should be learned going forward as a nation? Very briefly.
Thank you very much. Now, once again, may his gentle soul rest in peace. You know, this government is a continuation of his own regime. And I'm so happy that most of the policies he initiated have never been thrown away. In fact, they have been worked on and then been made better. Then, of course, the legacy. So many people worked with him, so many, and they are still in the national arena. So some of them are in Senate, some of them in national reps, some of them are in governance, etc. I want to reach out passionately to all those people, plus Garba Shehu, Ambassador Kazaure, and all the other people that he worked with. Try to maintain the legacy and let them be coming out and be telling people what he actually stood for.
Okay.
Through that, the legacy will endure.
And we saw the book, you know, launched by his spokesman, Garba Shehu, according to the president.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Abba Gambo from the Department of Crop Production, University of Maiduguri. Thank you for, you know, your insightful thoughts and helping this great man leave his legacy. You know, the nation remember his legacy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ruth. It's a call to national duty. We must all accept at any time. Indeed.
Ayodeji Makinde, our correspondent here in NTA, thank you for your time.
Any day, Ruth.
Well, many have said he came, he saw, and he conquered. And yes, he will be remembered for the legacies he left behind. But the question is, what will you be remembered for after this life? And that's Platform. I'm Ruth Aguilera.